Paul, I'm sorry, Paul, but you have to accelerate and resume your presentation because we have a lack of time. I appreciate you do that, please.
Also, then you can find all the examples on internet of what we try to do
Thank you, Paul, for your intervention.
Okay, so thank you very much, Paul. So now we change to Miguel Araújo to make his participation. I think they both went off when Carlos talked. Now Paul is here. Miguel is here now. Please, Miguel, the floor is yours. So now I don't know if Filipa is on, because she was
Não vai estar
okay.
presente.
So since Filipa is not going to be, I will open the floor to some questions. I think that we had an interesting views of how we can use technology, the challenge that we have to make it sustainable, our livings in the cities, and of course the link between art, beauty, and sustainability in the new concept of the new European Bauhaus. And I think what is interesting in this new concept is the introduction of beauty into this thing, and to the fact that we need this to make people in the center of our lives. So if there are any questions, if not, just, I mean, the floor is yours. I would like you to have some questions.
Yes, hello. My name is José Rechantes. I'm here gladly. I had a question already before when we had a little break to Professor Carlos Chalema. And I have also some questions and some comments on the rest of the interventions for Paul Dujardin, and recently also from Miguel Araújo. So the first question to Carlos Chalema. I like a lot your hands-on approach, if you like, like to a lot of use cases and some concrete examples, especially related, like to public institutions, as far as I understood, right? You mentioned Porto, you mentioned San Francisco, so you mentioned a lot of, like institutions, the ones that you were studying, for instance, the fires, like so on and so forth. So my question to you is, in your point of view and in your experience, because I can give you contra-examples as well, in the sense that examples where innovation never happened due to the lack of, if you like, receptors from the point of view of the public institutions themselves, all right? And I can, like elaborate a bit in that way. So in your perspective, what are the conditions, the rightful conditions that can promote such crossings between innovations and implementations, right? From the point of view of the public actors, right? This is for me something, I work on blockchain and, like DLTs, like crypto economy. And this is always something that bothers me, quote unquote, a lot. To understand, especially that in the public sector, the transition, if you like, that it's needed from the point of view of the education, and this is something that I will ask the other, like intervenients as well, like it's something that you see in a lot of cases deprived. So if you want to engage, for instance, in the dialogue, like this education, the reception of the information, sometimes it's not there, it's lacking. So if you want to have, like a concrete project being presented, it's sometimes not well received because, there's a gap. So in your point of view, again, like to finalize, like what are the necessary conditions from your experience that can foster, like can like create the necessary environment that from idea and innovation we can then, like present a concrete roadmap from implementation or MVP or pilots that you can create the example of Porto that then, like jumps to San Francisco and so on and so forth. Okay? So this will be my question to you. My question then to Paul Dujardin, I have actually 2 or 3 little, like questions. The first is a question of diversity, which I think is one of the quintessential elements when you're talking about the Bauhaus project. So my first, it's not really a question, it's more like a comment. It's, if you mention in your presentation, like how Portugal, this dimension and the relationship from the center to the periphery, why then was not, like examples from the periphery also presented in the presentation itself? Meaning that, like most of the case studies that you were using in your presentation were essentially from the center of the Bauhaus movement, like itself. I lived in Budapest 10 years, for instance, and I know that the intersection between, like the Hungarian Bauhaus movement and, like Weimar, like Republic was also very intense. So I wonder, like why not display this plurality of movements and voices and visions, for instance, in the presentation itself. So this will be a first, like if you like, comment. The second, it's about this idea of a post-crisis, like analysis and scenario, which I do agree with your premises that the post-crisis do allows for, if you like, a cultural reflection I am just wondering if we can assist or define that we are living already in the post-COVID crisis scenario, in the same way that we lived, for instance, and you showed the examples of expressionism, cubism, Dadaism later, so on and so forth, if that, you know, like especially in Europe, but not exclusively, in the aftermath of the First World War, where there is a concrete moment where, if you like, the crisis ended, which in this case was in November, right? So I wanted your opinion on this. I also wanted to relate your thoughts on the new organizational forms that are related to the crypto economy today. And this also connects with what Miguel Araújo was saying, especially with the new token economics that are associated, and how a lot of artists and a lot of designers and a lot of critical and creative minds are using. So namely DAOs or DeFi, or the uses of NFT in the creative art scenes, and the advent of what it's been one of the hot, you know, like new topics of metaverse, right? And the home working, for instance, and its societal impacts, and how you want to cross and blend this, or how is this making any impact on the analysis and appropriation of the conceptual basis of the Bauhaus movement, how it was imagined 2-3 years ago. And just a last question here to Miguel Araújo, when he mentioned the idea of the energy consumption on crypto. Well, if Miguel will follow some of the projects in the field, all of the protocols are actually tackling this issue here. So I can give him a couple of examples where the energy consumption is extremely reduced, and mostly of the protocols in cryptocurrencies, are exactly tackling this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if there is any other question. If there is a question, I will ask you to be short, because we are really out of time. If not, I will ask Carlos first to answer, but please, to all of you, to Carlos, Paul, and Miguel, please make it short, because, and then Graça will make the final conclusions. Please, Carlos.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. But the long story is a bit big, is a bit long, so, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. Science, you can find really two different types of science. Let's call it that way. Let's make it short. There are science for curiosity. Science for curiosity, normally nobody understands why in hell is somebody looking at something. I can remember one story which is interesting. I mean, in the early 18th century, there was a guy, his name was Évariste Galois, was French or Belgium, I never know. And the question is that he was doing some kind of mathematics that nobody understood. Well, he died in a duel. That's strange. Why do I talk about it? Because for 60 years, nobody looked at what this guy was doing or what he has written. Most of the things, the best things he wrote them in the night before the duel. Because, and at the beginning, he started demonstrating everything. But then he said, there's no time, there's no time, there's no time. Okay. As a professor later, in the beginning of the last century, that started looking and said, gee, this guy was a genius. But what is that for? What is the use of it? Okay, nobody knew very well what was it for, although that he has demonstrated a lot of old-standing statements in mathematics that nobody, probably none of you have heard about it. But there's one thing all of you have in your pocket or purse. I see the chairman has in his hands a smartphone. Our chairman can use the smartphone because this guy existed. He invented the basic for the technique that enables us to use our smartphone. So this is the problem in science. You never know when you're doing something if that thing is of any use later on. Maybe I took an extreme example, I'm sure. But I could take an earlier one. the LED, light emitting diode. I mean, 10 years ago, you couldn't find one putting out white light. You would find some in your special red light or special blue light or something, but no. Nowadays, you can use lasers for almost anything that you can think of, starting with treating problems in your eyes, if you don't see well enough. So there's terrible, there are two words really in science. They usually communicate well, but sometimes they don't. The problem is, in order to make it a product, you need to have support. Because this support, at least here in this country, is not very much available. You may have support to produce new doctorates, you may have support to create the new science, but you don't have much support to pick up something that you have just done and make up a product. This is very little. We did that with Veniam, the company I told you about. Yeah, but to make it a real company, you had to go to the United States and try funds, find the funds required to build the company. And that's life.
Thank you, Carlos. I think maybe Miguel or Paul, one of you, but please make an answer as short as possible. Whom? Yes, yes, please. Yes, please.
I only took some important slides from the
Now, Miguel, can you please, are you there? Yes? Okay, thank you.
Well, there's maybe two messages I'd like to leave before I go. Is that cities have a lot for improvement in terms of the management of energy. Since
Thank you, Miguel. So before I give the floor to Graça Carvalho to make the wrap-up of these talks, I would like to thank the organization for giving me the opportunity to being moderator here, and to the three panelists for having their time to talk with us and to discuss their ideas. So please, Graça, can you make the wrap-up of this meeting, please? It was very interesting. I would like to thank you all for being here and supporting this conversation that we had.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for the time that you've been here, and sorry for this huge delay that we had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's finished this conference, Science IND, Delivering Transformation. Thank you to all of you. Now it's lunchtime. We'll be back at 2:30 p.m. with conference Smart Cities, Health and Welfare. See you.